Awesome. Like, make sure we're live on the raw end of things, you guys. And awesome, we are. So, Nina, I'm Lauren, and I've never met you in person. So, we're kind of doing this like hybrid post COVID type interaction. So, this is cool. It's not as cool as it could be, but I'm excited.
No, I
So, how,
appreciate it.
yeah, so you have a lot of art in your uh, studio or wherever you are right now, but that's really cool. I know that you're fully immersed in your trade. And can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What sparked you with art that really got you into tattooing? Because you do all sorts of mediums.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I wish that I could say that I've been drawing and painting, forever since I was a little kid, but I feel like I was sort of a late bloomer. It wasn't until I like had to take an art class as a requirement in high school. I was like, oh, fine, twist my arm. I guess I'll do it. And then it was just downhill from there. I loved it immediately. We did. I feel like my parents and I jumped into it so fully. I was really lucky to have a lot of support there too. And they love and appreciate art. And about the same time, I feel like my friends started kind of getting tattooed, and some of the shops in town popped on my radar. I started sort of loitering around, probably more than they wanted me to. And it just immediately, I was like, this is amazing. I get to be around artists, people who are passionate about what they do. And I was like, anything that I can do to be a part of that is something I'm just going to like try to put all of myself into. So
Yeah, so you started in high school with what type of kind of medium really kind of drew you in? Were you doing like pencil drawings or like charcoal stuff, or were you doing maybe like sculpting and things like that?
right off the bat, I feel like we started immediately just with charcoal and graphite, kind of just really basic stuff. And then it wasn't until I followed up my freshman year of college, I started with my associate's degree in narrative, like studio art, and in our illustration classes, that kind of thing. Same thing, stuck with graphite, stuck with it. I felt like it was going really well, and it was like a medium I was very comfortable with. But then as soon as I was introduced to oil painting, I loved it immediately. I feel like I can't even imagine. I think I went from graphites, acrylic, watercolor, like sculpting, just jumping around all over the place. And then as soon as I got into oil painting, I don't even think I've really picked up those other things very much at all, unless I am somewhere where I can't have a whole oil painting setup. But that's definitely where my love it.
What type of learning curve was that for you, or were you just basically immersed in learning everything at the time, or was it kind of a little bit rocky at first?
Oh, it was definitely rocky. When I look now, we actually just moved recently and going through boxes of like, the stuff I was making early in college that I felt I was so like hyped about it. I look at it now, but I can't even believe that I hung on to this stuff. Um, so it was super weird. And then getting into oil painting too, I feel like there's such an abrupt challenge where you're trying to, sort of like get your vision out on paper. And one part that's a challenge with any medium. And then with oil painting, there's like all these other just technical challenges that go along with it. Just trying to figure out how to, mix things and balance things and what other products you should use and what you shouldn't. And I feel like that ended up being super helpful just for tattooing, because I feel like there's a lot of like parallel there just with trying to just create the art and be creative and then just deal with all of like the technical challenges at the same time, trying to make it happen.
Absolutely, yeah. With oil painting, it's definitely a long process, and it does the fine art resonates all over the place with tattooing, especially so you're freshman in college, you're painting in oils, but you're definitely not a tattooer at that point. Did you have tattoos early on, or what kind of piqued your interest to follow that path?
Yeah, I got tattooed on my 18th birthday. That was my plan. Was absolutely hyped about it, trying to do it as quickly as I could. And then, of course, going to art school, everybody is covered in tattoos. There's like a bunch of tattooers who are taking classes there. I feel like it was just kind of all around us. So I started going to all the like Friday the 13th events because I probably had like $50 in my bank account. So I was out here just getting really cheap, probably pretty bad tattoos. But I just loved it, loved being around it. So I feel like being in that environment with a bunch of other creatives and people who love tattooing, it was just like natural to see, like what that lifestyle looked like for a lot of artists. And it felt like just a perfect fit for me.
And your parents, how they feel, because they'd kind of seen your progression since high school, how they feel about the tattoo possibility.
I felt I'm super lucky. I feel like my parents are, they'll kind of share their apprehension, but when it comes down to it, they're just like, I'm excited for you to be doing anything that you want to do. They both actually, they had never been tattooed, never really talked. And the first two people that I ever tattooed, like towards the end of my learning and apprenticeship and everything, I tattooed myself, my dad, and the next day my mom. They were the
What'd you
first.
tattoo on them?
No, my dad got a little, like a little swallow, a little bird, which I thought was so cute because he's like a 6'6" burly bald guy with a beard, and we did this like tiny little cute bird on his ankle. And then my mom got a little raven as well, so they both went with the bird theme.
That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah. And how long ago was this? Because I'm just meeting you and kind of wrapping my head around what brought you to this level that you're at now.
I I'm coming up, and it's a little bit weird because I feel like the year with COVID was so strange and not tattooing for half a year, but right around 3 years ago. So I had a good, probably only about 6 or 7 months of learning before that. I feel like I got jumped into it like pretty quickly, but only just like a little under 3 years of tattooing full time.
That's pretty impressive, Nina. I mean, as we'll see later, you guys are going to show a few of your pieces, and I love your flowers and your application and the way that your tattoos look. I can tell that it's a piece that you did, which is really cool to add your own piece of character only under about 3 years of tattooing. Pretty remarkable. So did you start within a traditional apprenticeship when you began, or was it more of, being around people or just working on your art from college?
The traditional apprenticeship was my goal, and that's how I had hoped to get started. And then it was kind of a bumpy, rocky situation, which I feel like since tattooing, I've learned that so many people had, because I started out at a shop, and not to like throw anybody under the bus or anything, but there's a shop in Anaheim that reached out to me and was like, we're going to help you out. We're going to take you under our wing. We're going to get such an awesome start going for you. And then it ended up being a situation where it had just a really, really bad like vibe, a really bad attitude. There was a lot of like kind of hate and bigotry in there, and a lot of like substance abuse issues. And it felt like they also just wanted to bring new people in to try to get like money as soon as possible. So I feel like there wasn't even a lot of learning happening. It was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, here you go, here's some like basic stuff to do. Like, let's start making some money. Just like do it, just go for it. And I felt so uncomfortable the whole time. And I felt like I was kind of trying to like catch up myself just by looking at things like you mentioned earlier, like reinventing the tattoo. I was just like searching for resources anywhere I could get them. So I was around tattooers, and I was around people who were, kind of saying just like being around them would be enough to learn. But I felt like I was kind of just drowning in like figuring out what to do. So at the same time, I was just looking at books. I was going to conventions constantly. I was trying to get into whatever seminars would let someone who was just an apprentice into them, doing anything that I could to just like absorb all the information that I could find. And then I got really lucky because about 4 or 5 months after kind of hitting the ground running, trying to do that, the owner of the shop that I'm at now, which is actually where I got my first tattoo, so I was familiar with it, he kind of reached out and he was like, I know you have something set up there. It honestly, from the outside, looks like it's a little bit rough. I'm familiar with the situation that you're in. I love where you're going. I love like he kind of talked about having some potential, which was really flattering for me. And he was
Mm-hmm.
like, come work with us. We have some artists who will actually help you get going, actually help teach you. He was so kind even to offer to pay for educational resources. He was helping me go to seminars. He just put a lot of time and energy into helping me get where I'm going. And I feel like that is what really started to take off at that point, being around people who really knew what they were doing and really like had like care and appreciation for doing something a little bit more by the book. So it was kind of like a two-part learning process.
And it's funny, as much as the first part of your experience may have not been the best, it's still really cool to have that because you can feel like the contrasting how it goes in the industry, and you can kind of relate to a lot of people who've experienced that. But even still, 3 years is not so much. There's a long road ahead, of course, and I'm really happy. So the name of your shop that you're at now is called.
Oh, to date.
Okay, awesome, and you're still working with the same people, and see, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm still
Cool.
here. Absolutely love it. I feel like we have such a good, like, healthy environment, creative environment, people who love what they're doing and just care about making good art. And that's really the only priority. Nothing, not a whole lot of like go or bad competition, maybe good
Mhm.
competition. good place to be. So I'm happy to be there.
How do you think you guys maintain like the camaraderie? Because I've been to myself, I think I've walked into about 2,000 tattoo shops, and every single experience, believe it or not, is different. And it's like, how do you maintain that vibe where it's not competitive? You guys are pushing each other. You're in an educational or like a free, judgment-free zone. Maybe what in your mind? What are some of the things that you guys do together to keep that going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our owner, Rob, he also does I think, a pretty excellent job of trying to find people who are really driven and really motivated. And I feel like a lot of the people he's brought into the shop, he talks to them for a long time before, does a lot of like social media deep diving and just tries to get people who are, a little bit like on the straight and narrow, really trying to have a good like work-life balance, who are artists outside of tattooing, people who have like clear goals. He kind of just has a set of things, all the stuff that he talked to me about it in my interview too. And I feel like the way that he speaks to people about that and gets a good idea, what their kind of ambitions are, really
Mhm.
help, rather than just like maybe saying yes to anybody all the time or constantly trying to have as many artists as he can. I feel like he takes the time to get to know people and make sure we're all a good fit and that we're, people who are getting along well with each other. And then he also just takes a lot of time to facilitate, I think, relationships with all of us. We're always doing team builders. We have a lot of paint nights. We go out to dinners on holidays. Right at the end of COVID, when we were allowed to, Rob paid for everybody at the shop to go to this resort in San Diego where we had like all of our rooms next to each other. We did some like boat trips, fire pits, like all that kind of stuff. So I feel like he spends a lot of time getting us to kind of get to know each other, and then also just really fosters like a nice kind of uplifting creative environment where everybody in the shop is always going around, commenting on each other's work, saying, this is looking so great. You're doing such an awesome job with this, like talking to each other's clients. I feel like we just try to keep it really open and really
Mhm.
comfortable to come there too. And I feel like with that being the goal, it kind of just translates to us being comfortable as well. So it just ends up being really positive, which I love.
Yeah, and that's not only good for you guys, but that vibe you're talking about is totally sensed by your clients and keeps them, their head in there, and it's less stressful for them. So I'm sure you guys have just a fantastic environment for them.
Yeah. I think his the goal for the clients is, I think, what really makes it all work so well. He wanted the shop to be very like family friendly, which I think is sometimes not necessarily the vibe at a tattoo shop. We try to keep the profanity to a minimum. We try to keep, and everything just comfortable, because especially with our piercer, she has a lot of kids who come into the shop now, which is great compared to going to like, Claire's, or now like Target is offering
Yeah.
piercing. So I
Oh,
think with
really? Hmm.
all the time and making sure that we're like accommodating them, kind of just trickles up to just trying to make sure that everybody comes in and like feels good, feels accepted, feels like they're, happy to be there and that they can talk to anybody and that we feel like approachable. And the fact that we all are just have the same attitude about making that the environment just keeps it really good.
Yeah, that's incredible because the vibe for the client at the end of the day, if you provide that, that hasty environment, or you guys are just making them feel uncomfortable, that your business will definitely dwindle. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool, and it's good, because for me, I haven't been tattooed outside of a convention in so long. So it's like, not only do I look for the artist, but there's so many artists to choose from now that it's not only is it hard to stand out, but you have to be willing to give more, give more for that experience, give more for the client. And, it's not all about having a million followers on social media. It's about how do they feel when they sit in your chair.
Yeah,
You know,
I sometimes people forget like some of the artists, even as another tattooer, like knowing so many of my experiences getting tattooed are like, I love the piece, it came out amazing, but every time I look at it, I kind of think about this like weird vibe that I thought I was getting tattooed. And I always try to keep that in the back of my mind, because I'm like, as much as you can just love the art, I feel like it's hard to completely separate it from just the experience you had getting tattooed. So it's definitely always a priority to make sure my clients can like love their tattoo and also feel like they had a good time, while they were there. They didn't feel judged or insecure or uncomfortable or anything like that.
so what's the setting like for you personally? Are you one that like headphones on, head down, I'm going to do a full session, or what is, how does it start with you? Some artists do their their consultations over the phone or whatever it is with COVID. But what's it like for your process?
Yeah, I at least before getting tattooed, I try to talk with my clients as much as I can. I try to be as responsive as I can. I have like a submission form. I try to get all the details from them that I can to make sure that I'm even remotely a good fit. And then if they live in town, we just schedule consultations all the time. So just kind of throughout the day, I'll take like short breaks to go and chat with people. And even if we're not going to end up making an appointment, I'm always just happy to talk and even this, maybe some advice about another shop that could be a good fit or one of my coworkers that might be a better fit. So we're always happy to just take the time to get to know people. And then I try to roll that over into our session too. I feel like some of my clients probably wish that I talked less. I'm definitely not the headphone type. I feel like all of my coworkers and I are chatting all day. Our clients all the time. We have music on, we have TV on, but we keep the volume like kind of low too, just so we can make sure we hear everybody clearly all the time. So I feel like I get to know my clients pretty well because we're just sitting next to each other for so many hours, just chatting almost all the time. So
Do you tend to now do more like you said, you spoke to them if you're a good fit or not? How has that changed from your first year of tattooing to now to be a lot more choosy or like, doing things that you want to do? Because your portfolio, if, once you look at it, seems like you have a bit of creative freedom, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, I feel like so lucky and blown away that I even have that like so early in my career. I really didn't expect it getting into tattooing. I thought that would be something that would come like 5, 6, 7 years down the line or something. But at like a year and a half in or so, I started to do a bunch of realism tattoos like for free. I was just like, anybody who is down to come and let me, kind of experiment, practice with this style, I'd really appreciate it. And then it just blew up from there because I posted a few of those. I feel like people saw something that they were comfortable getting. And then I started
Mhm.
offering them out, even though I'd been tattooing like at a regular price for the last, year and a half. Um, and then that just kind of really let me like people started coming to me more and more only asking for realism, and that was what my end goal was anyway, was to kind of have that focus and that specialty. um, and when I had enough clients, like there were just enough people who were interested in coming to get it from me, which was so flattering that it ended up being a pretty smooth transition away from doing anything that walked through the door basically. um, and I still find myself, it's really hard for me to say no to people. So I feel like every year I give myself the New Year's resolution of like, I just have to say no to certain types of products, only so much time. And I'll find myself like doing something that is a style I haven't done in like 6 months. And I kind of want to remind myself like this client is probably going to get a better tattoo from someone who has that as their specialty. And if someone wants realism, I'm hoping that I will be able to offer them something that maybe someone else, in my shop or in town might offer. So um, I'm really lucky to be able to do that and have so many clients who are interested in it. And then I also just post my artwork often, and the shop does. And I have a big wall in my shop of just like drawings that I have that are available to get tattooed. And we have such a huge like walk-in traffic that I kind of feel like a lot of it got handed to me, and I'm just super lucky to be where I am. So
I mean, you say that, but things get handed to people where it's usually a mutually beneficial type relationship where it's like, if I'm going to pass a torch, I want to pass it to someone that I feel worthy of the torch. So give yourself a little bit of credit there because I'm going to pull up some of the pictures you shared with me to show everybody kind of what we're talking about. Very impressive stuff. So here's a really cool black and gray piece that you had done. Can you want to tell us a little bit about the idea and how this came about for your client?
yeah, I this client is actually my coworker, Gianni. He does this awesome like dark work, black work style.
Mhm.
With us like a year ago, we just immediately clicked on just the sorts of like imagery that we get a lot of inspiration from. And this piece was part of like a 3-part line of cut slash etching from like the 16th or 17th, from an
Mhm.
artist, Butcher. It's a Spanish name, but he just did these amazing like figurative pieces. And Gianni and I both immediately were like, these are absolutely amazing. We'd love to try to pull some sort of like uh, inspiration from it without doing like the woodcut style. So trying to move it a little bit more towards realism, adjust the composition a little bit. And we've kind of just been tattooing each other back and forth. He's working on Michelangelo's first painting. He's doing a tattoo of that on my thigh. So we just kind of
Okay.
work to get a lot of inspiration from those kind of pieces.
Sure. Are you going to be extending or expanding in these areas? Are you going to have any ideas for where you're going with this one? Keep it like
Yeah,
that.
considering so like I mentioned earlier, it being a 3-part, sort of like a 3 separate piece release that he did like over the course of a year. And we're considering having, or the plan right now is to have on one half of his calf or one side of his calf this piece, the back of his calf the second one, and the other side the third, along with some sort of like transitional, I don't know how you could really describe it because it's a little bit abstract sounding, but these sort of like block abstract shapes in the background that we want to have overlap each other in a way that's supposed to kind of feel like transition or something moving. So as he can kind of turn his leg, these figures are sort of in like dancing positions, and they'll look
Mm-hmm.
like on his leg. So that's kind of the goal there.
Cool. I love it. Absolutely. And this is a piece that I had really enjoyed seeing. And so your client, did she come to you with a bit of creative freedom for this, or was this something that you kind of built together with her?
She gave me a ton. She actually just said that she wanted uh, nature, but she was like, I just want Mother Nature in any kind of cool way. She gave these awesome descriptions. She's like, I want Mother Nature, but I want her to be cool. I want her to be sick. I want her to be strong looking. So nothing really specific other than just like a vibe.
Sure.
Um, I just kind of threw some ideas at her, having some horns, having some jewelry, some floral, nature, that kind of thing. I think the only specific request she had was sort of the third eye look and the kind of
Mm-hmm.
eye, I think, to try to keep her feeling a little bit more anonymous, which I think can be kind of hard sometimes with realism and looking for real references. You don't want to just be like tattooing some random person on,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is a model from whatever. So we try
Yeah.
to do a lot of different overlays and a lot of photoshopping to try to like pull it away from the reference and keep it feeling more like abstract and anonymous, and that's kind of where we went with it.
Very impressive, definitely. I like the anonymity because the originality of Google is it's possible, but you're not going to be able to do that without a lot of, like you said, photoshopping, Procreate work. So your design process, does it usually begin in Photoshop or Procreate, something like that?
I almost always, every single time, I start with some thumbnail sketches. So I try
Oh, okay.
composition, like sketching on paper, because I feel like I will have a lot more trouble with my proportions and with my composition if I do it on Procreate, where I can easily like zoom in and zoom out all the time. I feel like
Hmm.
things are rigid when I was doing that without having some sort of like preliminary drawing first. So I try to always do that first, and then I'll kind of just scan in my sketch and start drawing over top of it after that in Procreate. And then in between there, I just bounce between Procreate and Photoshop and like
Sure.
Lightroom.
Yeah, definitely the Adobe Suite and stuff. Sure. I know that looking back to some of Guy's teachings with reinventing the tattoo handbook, and how he mentions and how he shows all of the thumbnail sketches where he starts with, and it changes and it changes and it becomes something that it wasn't when it started, and that all came from your mind, which is really cool.
Yeah, that I feel like that was a reoccurring like in reinventing the tattoo, but that I felt like in all of the preliminary like design, life drawing, sculpting, all of those classes all the time, always just like emphasize starting small and starting simple and just building and building and building and letting it grow and not becoming too attached with like one particular aspect or one particular idea. And then especially seeing that roll over into different like tattoo education pieces and stuff, I've really tried to stick with it, and I think it's really a helpful piece of advice for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And not getting too attached, like you say, is huge. All right, so now we're going to kind of just show off a little bit of color, and I love your color. It's so soft, and the colors that you put together are beautiful. So in terms of color or black and gray, do you have this sort of preference over one versus the other, or is it kind of just a matter of your client's
Uh,
interests?
Gosh, I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with color. But it's a little bit more like passionate because when I love it so much. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. It's what I want to specialize in. I just want to get better and better and better. And then on the bad days, color just feels like so defeating sometimes. I think just like from a technical aspect, how much longer it takes. I feel like it's a little bit more difficult on my clients because of the saturation, you know, start to finish saturation. It's like just constantly pretty heavy tattooing. And then even like aftercare is a little bit more like arduous as well. So I feel like when it goes great, I love it so much. And then there's some days where I'm like, I never want to do color again. And I'm hoping that maybe it can just be more and more positive all the time. But with black and gray, I feel like I'm excited for the day. I know where I'm going. I get from point A to point B, usually fairly problem free. And I just love it all the time. So it's kind of hard because black and gray is like the easy comfort zone, and color definitely keeps me on my toes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's hard to say too. I mean, you being on the West Coast, from my personal experiences up and down the coast, there is a lot of black and gray. But the fact that you do have that portfolio, you have the capabilities to do it, is just remarkable.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So where did your background in color theory and stuff like that? So I'm assuming high school kind of touched the surface, but college, what was that like learning about, you know, the different color theory and adapting that to tattooing? Because it's a lot different when you have a human reference, a human canvas versus anything else.
Yeah, I'm really glad I ended up following up a little bit more than what was required for my degree with color theory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who he was actually a professor at Cal Arts for a long
Okay.
time, super high level, you know, educator, and he had retired and then come out of retirement because he got too bored, and he ended up working at this community college. So I felt like it was just like a gold mine of a person to be around. And he taught color theory, and then like color theory 102, color theory 20, and then even that transitioning to like the history of color theory. So I was able to spend a lot of time studying that, which I loved. And then I just try to take as much of it as I can into tattooing, and then also try to manage the sort of restraints of just longevity and healing with a tattoo. Because like ideally, if I could use any color that I want at any time and have no consequence for the tattoo, that'd be amazing. But I'm always trying to experiment with how we can push the color theory without losing the like long-term clarity of the tattoo, which I feel like is always the biggest struggle with color for me.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And then you know, the varying skin tones and such like that. Yeah. And then here's another black and gray piece. I really like how soft the edges are. Really, really nice.
Thank you.
All through here is really sweet. Do you have any plans on adding to this, to her, I believe her leg, maybe?
Actually, the same person who got the Mother Nature tattoo.
Okay,
Um,
so
yeah, she always comes to me, just she has like the best attitude. She's just so cool and so excited all the time, and she sits like she doesn't feel pain. So it's always really lucky to work with her. And with basically the same attitude, she's like, I want something cool. I want it to be something to do with Edward Scissorhand. You can compose it however you want to. I don't care. So we were able to do that, and then the rest of her leg, I think she's going to continue. I don't really feel like Edward Scissorhand is a horror movie, but she wants to kind of move into like a horror portrait sleeve kind of big project.
okay. What are some of your techniques that you've learned in like keeping these edges soft to kind of make enough space that can, you know, flow really well with you know, a series of portraits or something like that?
Yeah, I I feel like I'm learning more and more about it all the time because dealing with larger scale stuff, I think right now is probably one of the bigger challenges that I'm having. I feel like I've spent so much time in school and so much time with drawing, focusing on just, you know, like an 8 by 10 kind of space and how to make something look good in that space.
Mm-hmm.
From that to like a full, you know, dimensional dynamic space like a leg has had some speed bumps trying to work with it. And I feel like the best thing that I've done so far is just trying to communicate with my clients as much as I can up front, because I find that people will come to say, you know, I want this portrait. And then they'll come back 3 months later and be like, you know what, actually, I want a whole sleeve. And it's kind of hard because then I wasn't really able to anticipate it, or I didn't think that that was our plan. And I wish that I had taken a different direction. So lately, I've just been able to say, like, is this going to be a sleeve? Is this going to be a big project? And if it is, even if you can't afford to do it all right now, let's talk about what that looks like so that we can actually have a plan and see it through, and you'll end up with something that doesn't feel like patchwork.
Yeah, and then clients, even though they don't think they want something, it's undeniable that they probably will, especially with a piece like this. And yeah, those conversations right off the bat, I've heard so many different tattooers kind of speculate as to how they can deal with clients, but they just don't. Clients don't have that same mentality unless they're, oh, this is what I could possibly do for you, or and open up their minds that way. They have such a just entirely different perspective. Let's see if we have any more on this. Awesome. So I'm going to stop the share on that. Cool. So yeah, a little bit further for those of you watching, I kind of touched on it in the beginning today. So I completely randomly met Nina, and it was just really cool. I met her online and introduced her to the raw pigment. So we'll talk about that a little bit in your experience, and if you have any feedback you'd like to share or anything that we could do to make it the inks better, of course, we'd love to hear. So I sent over, I can't even remember what I sent, but I kind of, judging on your portfolio, I think one of the first photos I saw was this one. Right here, if it wasn't the first, it was some of these beautiful flowers that you do, and it's just such a you. This is so you.
Thank you.
Just I love how you your application and how everything flows so well. Show a few more of the flowers to you. So I sent you some colors and blacks and grays, and I was really excited when we kind of talked and we started talking about, who is raw, what are we here, are inks different, what's in the inks, and all sorts of stuff. So what were your initial thoughts of the inks?
Yeah, I was super excited about the book because I feel like I recently was really trying to look a little bit more into like the ingredients in ink and what's like, safer, a little bit healthier, maybe that kind of thing. And like right at the same time, I ran across you guys, and then I was asking you about, like water-based versus acrylic-based. And all of that was also kind of in the wake of people, I think last year, sort of trying to fight like FDA regulation and new things that are being introduced, I think in the US, as far as what's allowed to be in inks and what's not. And at the same time, I was looking into all that stuff. I just randomly, started talking to you about it. And I really, really liked the idea that it could be maybe a little bit less sort of plastic, acrylic, things that are not only do that have like annoying consequences, like you've mentioned on your website and everything, like drying and ink caps like crazy, getting all crusty, separating a bit more that. And I feel like right off the bat, when you sent me that stuff, not only was I excited to get it, but I have really, really liked using it. I feel like they're not drying out, they're not separating as much at all. And I feel like they're actually a little bit less, I want to say like messy, like they kind of are similar consistency as other inks, but I find that they wipe away a little bit more easily. So I'm not having to have my paper towel be like as damp or as wet or wipe as repeatedly to try to kind of see what I need to do. So it's been awesome in that regard.
Awesome. Have you happened to see some of the healed results come back in to the shop?
Yeah. So far,
Cool.
The one or two roses that I did in color, with them so far, I've only seen one of them healed. No problems at all. We didn't have to do any kind of touch up or anything like that. So, because that was definitely my first like little bit of apprehension, was that, oh, that all sounds great, but I feel like right off the bat, when I hear something like water-based, it sounds like it could be something that maybe would just like your body would kind of break down faster or something. I don't know. I was just like, well, I guess we'll have to see. And I even told my client too, I was like, listen, I'm trying some new inks. So just a heads up, because she's someone that I've worked with repeatedly. So I made sure to hold off on using them until it was someone that I knew. So I kind of, and she said, no problems at all. She loved it. And black and gray, I've kind of been using just the black set that you sent me. And it feels awesome. I was using Empire inks before that, and I had a little bit of trouble with kind of gauging how dark they were going to heal. They were feeling a little bit darker than I wanted. And I've had a really good balance with the one that you sent me so far. They've come in looking like just how I hope that they will look. So
cool. Yeah, I actually used to be with them for several years and then parted ways last year. So yeah, that's awesome. And so with you and using new inks, it's really good to be cautious at first, but it's like not that information really isn't out there so much. And like you're saying, you're searching to find out what's in the tattoo inks. and it's pretty hard to find because there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of white label companies, but it is something that tattooers and young tattooers, seasoned tattooers, veteran tattooers, they should know. And we'll have to see what happens with the FDA, right? Because right now it's pretty quiet in the United States. It's not like that in Europe, that's for sure. There's a lot of regulations coming as of January. So I guess we'll just have to kind of see, but it is really good for artists to be doing their due diligence to figure things out. So I'm happy to hear that you were doing that. Another book I can recommend to you that you would really, really like was co-authored by Hannah Wolf. It's called The Science of Tattooing. And it breaks down not only the pigments that are used, the needles, all sorts of stuff. So I definitely recommend. You can find it on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's hard to find those kind of resources, and there's a lot of like, I feel like you reach a lot of dead ends right away where people are like, we don't want you to know about this. We don't want you to be able to do it. On one hand, I understand not wanting people to, make some weird garage batch of ink and tattoo people with it. But at the same time, it's kind of hard, I feel like, as an artist to not be able to like confidently tell my clients what I am, putting inside of them. So it'd be nice to have a little better understanding.
Yeah, clients are much more hyper aware. Even in the last 10 years, at least from my experience. But that's cool. Definitely want to know. And also, we have been talking back and forth on reinventing with John Swerk, and he's a chemist out in Massachusetts, studying how light affects tattoos and what happens. What does the pigment turn into after it's hit with a laser or sunlight and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. He's offered a lot of insight, and he runs a website called what'sinmyink.com, where you can kind of open up and see just a small handful of brands and what they've discovered. I won't say exactly what I've been talking to him most recently with. We have to talk to some other people about that first, but they are finding what he is finding, things in the tattoo inks that he wasn't expecting. So I know that yeah, we'll have to see how that pans out. And it's not with our brand, it's not with some of the top brands, but that is really good to do your research first. Find out
Yeah.
who the people are that own it, find out where it's being manufactured, and really talk to your clients, because what they have been finding is that some of those brands aren't using the pigments that they thought they were. And so if you had an allergy to a certain particular red or particular other color, you want to know that ahead of time.
Yeah, I hate not knowing what to tell my clients. I also really don't like. I feel like with needles, with different materials, with how the machines are operating, I've always been really interested in having all the information that I can get about that, so that I feel like I'm not just blowing hot air when I'm talking to my clients about how something's going to heal or how they might have these allergies. And I feel like content with ink and with some like aftercare products are the two things that like lack a lot of transparency sometimes. And it sucks because then when we're trying to figure out something like didn't heal super,
Yeah.
it's like where was the problem, because we've got like 15 different variables going on here, and a bunch of them I don't even know what's in it, so I really couldn't tell you. And if
I
someone
was
said, yeah, I was allergic to this ink but I'm not allergic to this ink, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, sucks to be you, I have no idea what to tell you, and I don't want to give that answer.
No, nobody wants to give that answer. It's, that's interesting because when I was reading, it was probably 6 months ago that I read the book, but The Science of Tattooing was also talking about the importance of needles and how they affect the end results as well too.
Mhm.
And high grade needles are what you absolutely should be using. I think that they said it was about 50-50 pigments and needles affecting problems with tattoos.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I get a lot of concerns too with like really, really affordable or kind of low grade needles too, just like the environment in which they're made too, like how
Yeah.
like good is the quality control, all of that stuff.
Yeah, that definitely sucks with needles, and then you'll hear, well, it happens, and you can't maintain this consistency or this, you can't have the expectations be perfect every time. There's always going to be variations, but like I said, you don't want to be on the other end of that when you're dealing with clients that you've been working on, or you have like a problem in just one little part of their arm or leg.
No, and I feel like
Sucks.
we rely on all these materials, but when it comes down to it, I feel like I put this tattoo on you, and so I still feel like ultimately I'm the one who's responsible for however it goes for you. So I feel like it's kind of easy to try to excuse it with like, oh, inconsistency in this material or that material, but I feel like trying to get the best stuff and trying to know as much about it as we can should be, I feel like, the artist's responsibility. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So we know where we are. We know where we've been. What's next for you? What type of goals do you have set for you that you maybe something you've never done before, or traveling, or you know, seminars
Yeah.
and stuff like that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just sort of on like the precipice of transitioning from really feeling like all I'm doing is learning and really really early learning. And while obviously I'll continue to grow and learn forever, I want to try. Like I feel like I'm just now starting to feel like maybe I have something to offer to other shops, or maybe something like different to offer, rather than just feeling like I'd be like a burden if I tried to guest spot somewhere, you know. And so I'm really interested in, hopefully, as travel restrictions lessen and things are a little bit more safe to travel around, I'd really love in the next year or two to start going to conventions and guest spots and just trying to get to know people in the community more. Because I feel like I
Hmm.
started and then there's all this COVID disaster, and I feel like we really are kind of in this little sphere of our shop. And I'd love to just try to get new information from, you know, different amazing artists, and get more inspiration from people, and just try to learn and grow more that way. So traveling is definitely a big interest, and then this next year I'm also hoping to make a big push towards specializing a little bit more in like portraiture.
Hmm.
um Trying to push towards like more realism. And the reason I started doing roses so much was I wanted something that I could practice color use with, that was a little bit more loose and not so restrictive as maybe like a graphic kind of style. Just so I could try to take that into like color portraits and black and gray portraits. So that's kind of always been my end goal, because that's what I love to paint and that's what I love to draw. So I feel like I'm starting to get to the point where I'm comfortable enough technically to try to move towards portraits more and more, and not so much like pop culture portraits necessarily, but also offering things like, you know, somebody's grandma or somebody's cousin or something, which is always like the most intimidating to me. Um, so I'm hoping to be able to really start moving in that direction this next year if I can.
That's awesome. With memorial pieces, the intimidation is got to be skyrocketed high. But like you were saying earlier, having that environment where you can provide more for your client than an amazing tattoo, something that they'll remember you for. And it seems, just like talking to you for the last hour, that you really have that special thing about you that probably sits really well with your clients. So that's cool that you're moving in a direction to do pieces that require a good-minded, a comfortable, humble artist to apply the beautiful tattoo. You know, it's more than just that for your client. So that's
Well, thank
awesome.
you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Just trying to take this whatever steps I can think of to get to that end goal of just really good experience, educated experience, and making a lot of portraits and cool tattoos for people. So
Absolutely. So my last question for today, I'm curious if you could collaborate with anyone in the world. Do you have any, artists that you would love to work with, even if
oh my
it's a long shot?
immediately Matt Jordan from New
Oh
Zealand.
gosh, yeah.
He is like my ultimate like idol. I love his work so much. The way he's been doing recently too. Obviously, like specializes in the super large scale stuff, which what I was saying earlier is like the most intimidating and challenging for me. So the way he composes these pieces, I think, is amazing. And then he's recently been doing these awesome projects where he's like bringing in models and different types of like collaborators to take these photographs and recreate like pieces from art history, but with his own, you know, angle and his own lens on things. And I think that's just so awesome. So same thing, such a long shot. I wouldn't even want to say like that there's like a consideration or a possibility, but just the idea of being able to work with him or around him at all would be just amazing.
Absolutely. We do work with a few artists in New Zealand, in particular, like Lucky Tattoo Supply in New Zealand with Dre Rock.
Yeah,
So it's really cool. New Zealand is small. It's crazy. There's only about 300 shops there.
I know. And there's something in the air in New Zealand, because I feel like Matt's shop is decked with like all of the best artists I've ever seen in one shop. So
Oh
I feel
gosh.
like to just walk in there and be able to just stand around, you know, and then take in the just like insane amount of talent.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I agree that it's cool to have those, the wholesome person to look up to. Whereas before, I've myself, just different people in the industry, out of the industry, that I've looked up to, and it's like, oh, I'm a little bit disappointed. But for someone like Matt, that's fantastic. It's great to have those positive role models for the industry that are just on another level. It's just that's really cool.
And I've never, I feel like I've never heard a bad word about him too. I know it's hard to, like you said, like idolize your heroes and then kind of be let down maybe by some of the realities of it, but I've only ever heard amazing things about him, and his artwork obviously is just like unbelievable. So
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I know that I've been disappointed. I was disappointed at Golden State with someone that I'd looked up to for a long time, and yeah, it's just crazy. But for Matt, that is awesome.
Yeah, I've definitely had some disappointing interactions with people either getting tattooed by or at conventions where I'm like, I almost wish I had left it more like distant because now there's a little bit of like a stain on the memory of it. But I feel like so many amazing artists with just these awesome attitudes and amazing artwork. I feel like make up for it. So
Absolutely. Well, I know one thing that's going to happen next year that you'll definitely have to look into is the Paradise Tattoo Gathering. I don't know if you've ever been to one before, but those are so much fun. We did the BYOB event. Gabe hosted that in Massachusetts last week, and so yeah, if you have any chance to attend that, it's a gathering where there will be tattooing, but just artists, and the main focus is learning and growth and networking. It'd be really fun to see at that. I think it's next October 23rd, if I'm not mistaken.
that sounds amazing. I saw it like a day before happening, and I was like, how did I not like see it sooner or come across it sooner? Because it definitely looks like it'd be super fun to be a part of.
Oh, I learned so much last week. It was just unbelievable, really. So, if there's anybody watching too that joined or has any questions for Nina before we cut off, I have the chat open now. Just let me know. And also, thank you for watching, of course. But yeah, next year should be very interesting. I know with raw pigments, we have a little bit different approach where there are so many different ink companies and it's so saturated. I went to Chicago in July and I believe I counted 8 or 9, maybe 10 ink companies there. So it's
Wow.
it's so crazy to see the amount of marketing and the amount of just such a change in the last 10 years on the vibe of tattoo conventions. And I really hope that we can get back to not being centered around egos, just everybody being there to learn, to network, to connect, and really set a gold standard for American events, where the people like, Matt Jordan would love to come to the United States because we do it this way, and, all sorts of Europeans or whatnot. So I'm hoping that the convention scene can settle down a little bit after this whole COVID worry and, get back to people getting together in person.
I am just counting down the days. So I'm super excited for it.
Yeah. We'll be in Tampa for anybody watching. Come find us in Tampa this weekend. I'll be myself, Anthony Bennett, Sue Soya, Michael Biller, Josh Moon. I'm not sure if you know him over in Anaheim. Josh Moon.
I'm familiar with him. I don't know him personally, but
Oh, such a great guy. He tagged along with us to some. We were tattooing across from him in Golden State. We were near him at the Tattoo Collectors Expo, and it was really cool. That's why I'm familiar when you said Anaheim. I've heard some fun stories about everything there in the tattoo shop scene and stuff like that. So
yeah, I feel like it's so lucky just being in Southern California. I feel like you can throw a stone and there's just amazing shops and amazing artists all around. So, and I was so disappointed to miss the Golden State Expo. I was expecting to go, and then we had like a shop wide COVID scare, so we all had to quarantine, which is kind of the name of the game right now. But I'm hoping to be able to make some of the bigger ones this next year.
yeah, and there are a lot. Of course, you can check out Alex Van Dutch's worldtattooevents.com. He's a great guy. I believe he might have did some streaming on Reinventing this morning, but last week he was talking to Derb Morrison and Mario Barth and a few others. But I know that Hell City will be back in Phoenix next year, so that will be one that maybe you can attend to. It's not too far off.
Definitely. We're really hoping to possibly go as a shop over to Hell City next year. We had a couple of artists who used to work here end up having to move into to Phoenix, and we've been able to kind of build a relationship with a couple of the shops out there. So hopefully we'll be able to make it.
Cool. Yeah, that was my first convention ever, many, many years ago.
That's awesome.
Crazy. Yeah, Nina, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to just sit down and talk and get to know me a little bit. Like I said, I'm with Raw Pigments for you guys watching, and just really love connecting with artists. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's not about products. It's not about anything else. It's about quality tattoos and good relationships.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. So thank you to everybody watching. Can you tell us a little bit about where to find you online before we sign off, Nina?
Yeah, absolutely. Instagram's of course the number one. Nina Rose Art and Tattoo on Instagram, and Devoted Ink, our website, which we try to keep it really updated and talk to everybody there too.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I will be talking to you soon. Just wait to sign off. I'm going to end the event. So